Today we have friends and family members who say they're tired of the punk and the piercings, and they've asked us to help, and we're going to try. All right, so now, do you, yeah, you can sit down. Can you even get a job?
Yeah, I have a job.
What? What?
What I do, I sell, like, stuff like this, like the hair dye and everything in my store that I work at.
Was any of this painful?
A little bit. I mean...
What was the most painful piercing of your 57 piercings?
First one, I think.
The nose? Yeah.
Right in the middle.
You did it yourself.
With abrasive makeup and clothing, loud boisterous music, and a rebellious attitude that would scare any Christian suburban mother, the punk subculture dominated the alternative music scene of the late 1970s, 1980s, and early 1990s. However, in a scene that one would think of as dead and buried, a mere memory along with blurry photographs stored in someone's attic, the punk scene has seen an uptake in popularity over the past few years. This gain in popularity includes new music entering the modern alternative scene, but something not many would consider is the upsurge in movies. I don't know about you, but ever since the pandemic, alternative characters have been popping up left and right in films. Movies like Metal Lords, Moxie, and Dinner in America have been exhibiting these characters and their lifestyles more than I have ever seen before. Instead of being the weird side character, these characters have taken the main stage, their love of heavy music and lifestyle being the main theme of their stories. However, with these characters coming into light in our contemporary understanding of punk, one has to wonder if they're getting their ideals and beliefs punk is so heavily grounded on correct when sharing it with the general public. The movie that made me want to make this video is the film Dinner in America by Adam Reimer. This film, first shown in 2020 at Sundance Film Festival, and then later released for the public on all streaming platforms in 2022, stars actor Kyle Gallner as Simon, a punk rocker who is on the run from the cops as he falls in love with a young woman, Patty, who is his biggest fan. Classic. Simon's character is violent, angry at capitalism, disrespects authority figures, has a criminal record, and would do anything for the person he loves. He loves music and Patty, and that's it. Within the movie, it's obvious that the audience is supposed to get that he is the ultimate punk rocker, the archetype for what exactly a punk guy is like. Yet, while watching this, I was thinking to myself, I wonder how much of this is accurate to how punks acted in the 90s, which is when the movie takes place. So I called my super epic and cool punk rocker dad, who is actively playing in punk bands and involved in the punk scene throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s.
Hello.
Hey!
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Great.
That's good. That's good. I have a couple questions for you about, like, punk movies and everything.
Movies? Okay.
Yes. During the 80s and 90s, were punks, like, heavy into, like, that lifestyle of, like, crime, whatever, going through that? Like, did they make, like, the idea of, like, being punk their whole identity?
Some did, some didn't.
Okay.
Some were that way, some weren't. It's like any cross-section of people. Most of the punks I knew weren't breaking into stuff.
Yeah.
They weren't doing things. Some of them that I knew did. It's a bit of a stereotype that person is that way. Most likely, like in the character, that archetype, that person is that way whether they're a punk or whether they're a Wall Street trader.
Yeah.
It's the same personality. They're just in a different culture.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. And then after watching Dinner in America, I realized, wait, hold on. Pause for a minute, stop the phone, call 911, put the phone back down because it's not that much of an emergency, but there were movies in the 1980s. What? Movies that featured punk rock characters and themes similar to the ones we are seeing now. How could I have been so blind? It's honestly probably the amount of excessive eyeliner I wear. But I digress. So I sat down and watched a sci-fi movie from 1984 called Repo Man by Alex Cox. The main character, Otto, played by Emilia Estevez, is a punk rock dude who repossesses cars for a living. Although Otto is different than how Simon acts. Otto doesn't respect authority. I mean, he did pour out a beer onto the repossession office's floor when he was offered one. However, he is more humanized than the other punks I have seen in these movies. Hell, he's more humanized than the other punks in his own movie. Otto isn't a criminal nor violent, and he truly cares about his friends who also work at this repossession office. His whole life isn't centered around punk, but rather his job being a repo man. Where is that representation in modern movies? Yet, like I said, Repo Man also shows 3 other punks, Light, Marlene, and Archie. These are the classic punk archetypes that we have been seeing in the media for years. They are reckless, violent, aggressive criminals, and they aren't all that bright. They commit crimes because they're bored and frustrated. While talking to my dad, he explains more of why this archetype is shown. And then that kind of goes along with my second question. Because, okay, I've watched that film, like Dinner in America, you don't have to watch it, and then I watched Repo Man. Like, Otto, the main character, like, the punks he was around were just, like, criminals. They were like, let's go do crime. Like, every time, like, something was messed up with their plans. Let's go do crimes, let's go break into stuff.
Out of frustration.
Out of frustration. Okay.
Yeah, they weren't...
Yeah.
They weren't doing crimes because they wanted to better themselves or wanted to steal from people.
Yeah.
They were just doing it out of frustration because there was nothing else to do. Have you heard the phrase latchkey kids?
Mm-mm.
So a big thing in the 80s was they called kids latchkey kids. In the 80s, when more families needed to have 2 parents working to survive, keep the house alive, they would give their kids a set of keys, and the kids would come home from school and they would get into school and they had no supervision at all. Think of you're 14, not even 14, you're 12 years old, and your parents give you keys, and they're going to see you later in the evening. You know, you're going to just be out doing your own thing, right?
Yeah.
That character archetype is the latchkey kid that is just lost.
Yeah.
And you saw that when they said, let's go do crimes, right?
Yeah.
They did it out of frustration.
Yeah. They didn't know what else to do. They were,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Those characters, those 3 characters,
Yeah.
weren't the sharpest tools in the shed.
Yeah, no. I kind of figured. I was like, these guys are really dumb. Were there a lot of people in the punk scene like that archetype? Like, were they like the latchkey kind of like dumbass, like kids? Or was it like kind of just a mix?
As there were as many of those people in the punk rock scene as there were in the jock scene.
Right.
As there were in the other scenes. There were also people in the punk rock scene that were reading Nietzsche and reading philosophy and reading literature and writing and being extremely productive. The cool people in the punk scene were the really productive people. So there were dumbasses, and there were people fucking shit up.
Yeah.
And they were there. But if you think back on all the punk rock names, the actual punk rock named people, name one that wasn't extremely creative.
So then with like all of this like creativity and like your experience with like all these great people and all these creative and smart people, like I don't know if I've kind of asked you this already, but like why do you think in like where did like the idea of like criminal kind of like fuck shit up just to fuck shit up like stereotype came from for punks? Was it like a part of like parents being scared that their kids were rebelling, or like what was
it was an easy thing for the media to grab onto.
Yeah.
It's easier for me as a reporter or as a reporter or as a institutionalist to say, well, that guy's just a criminal. So it's easy to call punk, the criminal punk rock, that's just an easy stereotype, and it's overblown, and it's...
Yeah.
But here's the other thing with that, too, though.
Yeah.
But flipped it on its head.
Okay.
And they liked to say, okay, if you're going to be blah, 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 you know, like we're stupid criminals,
Yeah.
we'll play into that.
Yeah.
And we'll say, fuck you, and do it in a stupid way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A lot of punk rock was, you know, we're just doing our thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to make us look, if you're going to make us out to be just dumbasses because you're too much of a dumbass to understand what we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
we'll dumbass you further.
Yeah. Why do you think there's, like, the dichotomy of, like, normal punk guy who kind of looks down on, like, all these, like, weirdo punks, and then, like, the weird, like, way too extreme punks in, like, media?
Because punks don't fit in anywhere.
That's true.
Punks don't fit in their own group. You know.
That's punk rock.
That's punk rock.
That's
you know?
punk rock. So there is a difference between films portraying punk rock in the 1980s versus now. The 1980s showed a less stereotypical punk character in their films, humanizing them for their audience to better relate to. Then again, looking back at these characters, are they really humanized? I mean, everything that I've seen, and even more now, is stereotype after stereotype. Of course, there is some truth in these characters, like what bands they listen to and a love of music, but below that surface, there isn't much that's correct. Like my dad said, the archetype of the violent, criminal, angry, stupid punk isn't accurate. It's easy. As we already know, it's easy to stereotype something that we don't know, especially if it's counterculture. Even with the resurgence of alternative music and ideals, it seems easier than ever before to perpetuate harmful and frankly inaccurate stereotypes. While there can be truthful and helpful representation of punks in these movies, they get it all wrong. The punks who go far and who we see in bands are the ones who are creative and smart and willing to go ahead and create something themselves, even if they don't have the money or proper means to. I mean, punk is all about DIY. Doing it yourself and pushing the bounds of creation through music. That's one of the most authentic forms of art you can get. Going against the shackles of societal expectations to create something that matters. I think that's the punk character we should be perpetuating in our films.